I need to lay out the situation a little bit for this video. I was getting ready to have a hip replacement surgery in middle of March. So prior to that, I drove this 76 Corvette that I'd been Restomodding down to my barn, and I brought up the riding mower so that my wife could cut the grass. And I didn't move the car until, actually I didn't move it, my son moved it in July when he came to visit. He brought it up from the barn, and then we cleaned it up and we were going to a car cruise, so I let him drive the 76. I drove my 2015. And when we got to the car show, I asked him, hey, what's the gas situation? Because I didn't remember from March. And he said it's about 1/8 of a tank. And I said, okay, well, when we leave, we're going to dinner, but on the way home, stop for gas. Well, after dinner, he left the parking lot before me, forgot about stopping for gas, and we got home and remembered it. I had a can of gas in my shed. Should have been around 6 gallons in the can. And I said, well, let's just dump this into the tank, and then I can get gas some other time. Well, we dumped it into the tank, and the gas gauge didn't move, at least not enough that we could see it. And so the rest of this video involves me investigating why my gas gauge doesn't seem to be responding. When you've had literally almost everything apart on a car, I guess sometimes it takes a while to shake things down. And that's interesting. Oh, okay. There was pressure when I opened the gas tank, and normally when I've opened the gas tank, it was after I've driven it. I was going to put gas in it, so you would have been sucking the fuel out. This time I parked it, and I just was checking the pressure, or not checking the pressure. I'm checking the fuel level and the float level. I'm going to try to look at it through an endoscope, and the reason I'm doing that is because the gas gauge before and after adding fuel to it was showing maybe 1/8 of a tank. I don't know how good this is going to be. I'm focusing in on the endoscope screen, and I'm trying to go down in here and see two things: my fuel level and my float level. See if the float is actually floating, because I was registering less gas than I knew that I had in there. So I have to go get me something to prop open the door that's in there that kind of closes it off when you don't have a hose nozzle in it. I got to prop that open so I can get the endoscope down in there. Okay, keep in mind that's the monitor you're looking at. I found a short piece of PVC electrical conduit that I'm going to use as a way to keep the thing open while I look down inside. It's going to make it a little difficult to see the level of the fuel, but I think that's the float if I can get it in the picture. And the float is floating. So that is good. I had it in the picture. There's the float. Okay, fortunately, the piece of PVC, whenever it wants to move up and out of the hole, which means I can use, well, maybe I can use this one. I'm trying to get it a view sideways once I go in. So what I've done is I've bent my cable that has the optics. There you go. I'm trying to look inside the tank to see whether the tank has collapsed or anything like that, which it has done in the past. I need to get this cable so that when I move it, I don't move the monitor. Okay. So what I'm trying to do is look around and make sure that that gas tank hasn't collapsed again, although the gas tank collapsing would only make the that float looks pretty low. It is floating. It looks like that rod is extended down. I wonder if that might be what that gauge is going to read based on that float level. I am going to try to get a rod and hook it to that and see if I can pull that float level up. Might be hard to have all this stuff down in that hole at the same time, but that might be the issue. It might actually be pretty low on gas, even though I added 6 gallons to it. That might be the range of motion of that. It's an aftermarket fuel pump and gauge in the tank. That might be as good as it gets. So I'm going to shut the camera off and go see if I can raise that float level and get a reading on the gas gauge. Okay, I didn't have any success in actually moving that float, but what I think I can show you is that that gas gauge, it might actually be pretty low on gas, even though I added 6 gallons to it, because if you look through here, if I can get it focused right, the level of the gas is not very much above the pickup point. So maybe all I need to do is add gas to this maybe there's nothing wrong with the gauge. I did run out of gas once with this because the tank was collapsed and it wasn't holding anywhere near the amount of fuel that it should have, and I was filling it up, but in filling it up, I was only getting 9 or 10 gallons in what should have been a 17, 18 gallon tank. So what I am going to do as my first easiest solution to the problem is add more gasoline to the tank. I have a couple of tanks over in my shed, and I made them half tanks, or half cans rather. I have a couple cans, they're half cans. Should be about 5 gallons that I set up that way prior to my hip surgery, replacement surgeries, because my wife was going to cut the grass, and then she was just so busy doing other stuff that she didn't have time, so we hired a grass cutter, and that gas has been sitting there, so I need to use it before it gets too old anyway. So I'm going to dump that in and see if we get gas on the gauge. So I'm just showing this fuel gauge from the passenger side of the car. It's actually reading a little bit above empty. That's from the angle of the camera view. But I'm going to turn the key on to get a before I add gasoline. Reading. Okay, that is the reading before I add gasoline. We're going to add about 5 gallons, that's what I have, and see if that reading changes. I'm going to do that off camera. Okay, I'm done adding the gas. Let's see if it registers on the fuel gauge. I'm hoping it does, because that means I don't have anything else I have to fix. And actually, it does look like I forgot to turn off the ignition. It does look like it registered. So, the problem is not that the gas gauge isn't working. It's just that its ranges are, and again that is reading higher than what it looks like it's reading. But the range for it's a Holley in the tank fuel pump for fuel injection systems. It is not calibrated correctly for the 76, even though it's marketed for a 76. So my next trip will, and I won't put it on the video, but my next trip will be to stop at a gas station first thing when I leave to get the gas gauge up near as close to full as it gets, because it doesn't get all the way, which is another issue I have with it, being that it's marketed for a 76 Corvette. It should read full when it's full. It only gets up to about 7/8 of a tank. So, well, fortunately, I don't have to worry about doing a repair to the system, the gas gauge system, because there's nothing that's easy to repair that's going to make it a whole lot better. I just have to know that reading 1/8 of a tank or so is getting pretty close to empty, and it's time to fill up. You don't want to be sucking you don't want the pump to be running when it's not submerged in fuel, because that wears it out quicker, because the fuel actually cools it. So that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. So we're looking at the filler cover for the 76, and I lied when I said that that was going to be the end of the video, because it's probably a month later and I have more information. So took this out and I ran the gas tank till the gauge read under empty. And that was back in the 70s. That was a characteristic of Chevy fuel gauges. You could run them to under empty before you'd run out. But in this case, I didn't run out. When I filled the tank up, I got 9.5 gallons, which is exactly half a tank when this thing was reading under empty. It was on the E on the gas gauge. Let me get you a picture of that if I can. Okay, that reading is not accurate because the engine's off, and that's just where it left. It's reading about 7/8 full. But I ran this down to where that needle was on the top of that E and got 9.5 gallons. So I know that I can run it down to empty and fill up, and I'm good. The other thing I have going for me is if I start to see my sniper display flash in the yellow on air fuel mixture, I know I'm getting low, because that's what it did the time I ran out. So that's what I'm going to end up doing. In the meantime, I will see if there's some way I can add some resistance to the fuel gauge circuit and see if I can make that better.